philosophy or government major class, the instructor and students will frequently bring up examples from America, so much so that an international student would feel like they have no space to say what they want to say. So all the factors I've mentioned above can lead to a negative classroom climate, which can take the form of a classroom you don't really vibe with, a classroom you feel it's hard to participate or move into the flow of the discussion, a classroom with very few friends, or most of all, a classroom where you don't feel welcome and you feel like an outsider. So why is this all important? So there are other reasons that may lead you not wanting to participate in discussion. Of course, like not having like done the reading or like if you're like using a phone while in class, which like I've often done, God knows like how many times. But like the three I listed like just before are the ones I feel that are the most significant factors that discourage international students from like participating. And personally, I feel this is an important issue because like not only I really enjoy discussions myself, and I think you would agree there's a lot of value to be found in participating in discussions in class, but that I think it's also important to emphasize that Wesleyan is meant to be a space for everyone and not just a group of people or a dominant mode of communication. So to identify these factors that prevent international students from participating in class is in a way performing a diagnosis and introspection, which may hopefully lead us to strategies that can increase the participation of minority students that would challenge the hegemony of college discourse and way of speaking.
Yeah, Quentin, first of all, just thank you so much for sharing so much and being so vulnerable. I can't, I'm a domestic student and can't say enough, just like how valuable it is to hear about experiences like that. And like Quentin and I know each other, but I feel like I'm learning so much from him. But yeah, hi, I'm Anya. I was introduced in the beginning, but I'm a domestic student. I'm from Phoenix, Arizona. And Quentin brought me on just to help talk about like strategies and ways that we can actually like help bridge that gap because it is so unfair to international students, and the system is so skewed like it just against voices that aren't from white Americans. um, so we've spoken a lot about how difficult participating can be and why that difficulty is not the fault of the student, but rather an issue with the classroom environment. I'll be talking about some strategies to help build confidence in the classroom, as well as some strategies that address how to communicate with teachers and classmates in order to actively create a better environment, which of course, again, shouldn't be your job, but that's where we are. Um, yeah, thanks, Quentin. Professors often assume that all students come to college having learned the same rules about class participation. Obviously, that is not the case. As Quentin has already mentioned, this assumption that all students arrive in a classroom with a similar preconceived understanding of what it means to participate in class is a super detrimental quality of discussion. Especially with non-American students, but all students are negotiating the power dynamics in terms of a discussion as they're going. Many of the Wesleyan professors were educated in a time when all the students at universities like Wesleyan came from the same 4 or 5 private Northeastern boarding schools, and all had the same expectations for the etiquette for classroom discussions. Now we have a very diverse population of students who have extremely difficult time understanding classroom etiquette because it isn't homogenous. Not everyone comes from the same place. Unfortunately, it's become the student's job to force the professor to recognize that not everyone comes to a classroom knowing exactly how to comfortably engage in a discussion. Good discussions have guidelines, and because of our diverse population, we should be making those guidelines specific, and we should be talking about them explicitly. Quentin, if you want to go to the next slide. Heck yeah. Yeah, Quentin and I are both part of a discussion-based major. He's talked about it a little bit. It's called the College of Letters. Our classes operate as Socratic seminars, which again is a Western term. And what it means is we all sit around a circle and talk freely about the books that we read and the reading that we did. And it's not at all lecture-based. Our first colloquium, which is our discussion class, was very emblematic of the issues that we mentioned before. No one in our class knew whether or not to raise hands, when to step up and participate, when to take a step back and let others teach. And our professors did very little to address that issue. So the following semester, we took a different class, but with all the same students, because that's the way that our major functions. In our following colloquium, which is this semester, our class decided to create a set of community guidelines to help us learn how to participate more effectively together. These community guidelines included making it a norm to never speak over someone who speaks less often than you in class, and making that a really explicit rule. Which for me, that was obvious. I went to a school where you never spoke over someone who spoke less often than you, but that, for a lot of my classmates, that wasn't just automatically understood. We also had a discussion about hand raising and decided that on Zoom it would be best if we all paused a moment after each person spoke and allowed those who wish to, all who wish to speak afterwards silently raise their hands to signal everyone else that they would want to speak. Once everyone saw who wanted to speak next, the person who speaks the least often would get to make their point first. This seems convoluted, but it actually flows really naturally once you get the hang of it, and it really helps ensure students who tend to participate less that they have a chance to jump in whenever they feel like they want to. Before you change the slide, Quentin, could you go back for just a second? I just wanted to like show that in this picture, this is a screenshot of the like actual Zoom guidelines our class came up with, me, Quentin, and our classmates. We created a section for like guidelines that pertained to every discussion we ever had, and then we had a section for guidelines that only pertained to Zoom discussions, and a section of guidelines that only pertained to in-person class discussions. And I just felt like we did a really good job, and we're still working through it. We're still like, like tweaking these guidelines every so often, but it did a really good job of us all coming together and say like, what is not working and what is working and how can we make this better? And we all care about the quality of the discussion we're having. How do we make it the best it can possibly be? So that was just like really beneficial, and it will continue to be beneficial for our class. Okay, you can go to the next slide. Thank you. But as much as that worked really well for us, you don't have to write a participation manifesto like Quentin and I did in order to create a better classroom environment. Emailing your professors about the concerns that you have can make a huge difference in how a class is ordered. Often professors are simply too blind to the fact that classroom environment is making it more difficult for certain students to participate than others. Asking professors to be aware of that difference and maybe suggesting that the professor make a point of addressing the classroom about the way the discussion functions can go a long way. This here is an example of an email written by a student to a professor after a turbulent class discussion that made them feel unwelcome. And so I think this is a really good emblematic example of just how powerful it can be and how easy it can be to send an email saying like, I felt uncomfortable here. Like, I want you to know that I'm trying, and it's not just that I'm lazy, because shitty professors will think that. And that sucks, and it's really unfair to international students and other students who are marginalized. And so just like having to take that extra step and send that email can go a really long way. You can change the slide, Quentin. Thank you. Additionally, beginning your ideas with phrases such as, it seems to me that maybe, or I can't fully answer the question, but I do think that, or I'm not so sure about this, but perhaps, or this might be a stretch, but these kind of phrases can take the pressure off of your contribution. You don't have to say the most profound thing of all time every time you speak in class. Like just simple, just factual questions, so valid. Like just general questions, things you don't know, is often more helpful than things that you think you do know. And like that is really, that's the stuff that enriches classroom discussion. So once you have your lead-in phrase, another great way to do this is to say like, going off of this person's point. It can also really help add cohesivity to the discussion. After that lead-in phrase, you can add your question or comment or small contribution. One way that I find doing the contribution element of this, really like one really comforting or easier way to step into this is to piggyback off of someone else's idea. This doesn't mean you're taking their idea as your own. This doesn't mean that you're like taking credit for something that isn't yours, but rather if someone says something that you liked, it can be a really low commitment and low pressure way to participate, to just say, I really liked that comment. I think that's interesting. And maybe add a tidbit, add a little bit after that. Say, I think this is interesting because, or I also see your point in this passage. Those can be really low pressure ways to add to the discussion and piggyback off of other people's ideas, and know that no matter what you said, when piggybacking off someone else's ideas, someone else in that classroom supports you because you supported them. And you're not alone in that, in that contribution. And then when you end your statement, you can have like a lead out phrase or an outro, which can additionally add cohesivity to that discussion, which is like, does anyone know like what this could mean? Or does anyone have any thoughts on what I just said? Or like, do you guys agree or disagree? It just really, it makes your statement not just something that you said to the professor, but rather like something you contributed to a discussion. And it just enriches everything. And this is not for international students or non-international students. This should be for every single student participating in the discussion. But this formula can make it slightly more easy. So Quentin calls this sandwiching. And so it's, starting with an intro, having your content or question, and then having an outro as well. And that just being the way that you can make a contribution in class. It can be quick, it can be long. It's really what you're comfortable with, but it's just to help you feel more comfortable talking in class. Also, I realize I speak really quickly when I'm nervous. And if I at all am going too fast, please like put in the chat that you want me to repeat something and I'm happy to do so. Okay, I think, is that my last one? Oh, yes, I went off script. So yes, that is most of what I have. So piggybacking off of others makes discussions more full. It reminds the class that we are all discussing together rather than each of us individually speaking without any connection to each other. I think that's my last slide. If Quentin, you want to go to the last one. Ultimately, Quentin and I are just here to help you convince you that your voice matters and that everyone wants to hear it. But Americans can be loud and annoying and professors can be short-sighted. And ultimately, these are just some strategies that can help you like bring more confidence that you shouldn't need to have to earn again into classrooms. And yeah, Quentin, do you have anything else you want to say before we open for discussion or?
Yeah, thanks, Anya. That was like super great. Yeah. So like just one thing I want to talk about these strategies, it's that, well, like strategies are strategies. We don't expect them to be like magic bullets or cure-alls because of, it depends on like situation to situation. And like whereas like one strategy might work well in the class, like the guidelines were created for like a colloquium, it might not work well for like some class, like a big class with like, I don't know, 50, 60 people, or even like just 15 people, because like just because of the fact that you don't know them that well, and the fact that you don't know them that well could be like the thing that's like discouraging you from participating in the first place. But I think these strategies are the ones that we've like employed, and personally, but I found like really helpful while trying to like participate in class. So I hope like these strategies are at least like of some value, and you can have like a few takeaways from it. If anything, I think the sandwiching approach, like leading your like statements with like intros and outros, I think personally that has been like super helpful for me, and it just helps like really get the flow going instead of like having like each person's contribution be like an isolated chunk. So it, yeah, really connects them together. So I think the last thing about like these strategies I want to like mention, I want to clarify, is that there is and should be a sharp and fine distinction drawn between like appropriating like American discourse and like having one's own like mode of like communication. So like obviously a strategy, if we may call it that students can employ and have like often like maybe too often employed, is like appropriating a white mode of discourse, or like as some students put it, like acting white. I just want to make it clear that this like panel is not about that, and even though it's a fine distinct line of distinction, like I feel that it really should be made, like the distinction between these two. I think so like the hope of this panel is like through these strategies you'll be able to like negotiate your mode of like communication without compromising like the one that you're most comfortable with. So yeah, I think if there's any main takeaway other than like the intro outro thing, I think it would be that, like really just like be confident in like your mode of like communication. I mean, yeah, like it's something that like a space like Wesleyan needs. Yeah, so I think that's like all for like our section of like the discussion. So like yeah, so we're moving on into like the panel part, and like yeah, we'd love to like hear from you if you have any thoughts, like um professors, if you like have any thoughts, like feel free to jump in as well.
Yes. So Nafisa and I will be kind of moderating the discussion part of this panel. I guess to start off, Nafisa.
Yeah.
Go for it?
Hi guys, once again, I'm Nafisa. I'm from Bangladesh. So I just wanted to thank you guys so much for presenting. That was really good. I could relate to a lot of the things that you were saying. And I think one of the first points that were brought up were the cultural barriers and not understanding a lot of the like cultural context sometimes, like the Red Sox and the is it the I don't even know. See, like all of that. So I think like that's something I definitely resonated with because I remember my um freshman year. It was my first time watching the Super Bowl, and I've never watched the Super Bowl before. And people were so like, "Oh my God, you've never watched the Super Bowl?" And I'm like, "It's an American thing. Nobody really plays football outside of America, you know?" It's like, so I think, and that was like the first experience I have ever had with. I mean, I've had multiple, like more than that, obviously, but that was the first time I was like, wow, I'm different than them. Like, it's such a simple thing. It's something like Super Bowl, right? But it's something that people do with their family, with their friends. They like, they do so many different. So yeah, that was the first time I really like truly felt that, especially also with my friends. So I was just wondering, like, feel free to speak up because this is a panel. So have you ever experienced like something like that, like any cultural barriers or like uncomfortable situations, or not even uncomfortable, can be something super simple.
You can either say it out loud or put it in the chat, and I can read it out loud for you if you don't feel comfortable speaking.
I'm not shy, I'll talk. I'm going to give kind of the reverse experience. When I was living abroad in Russia, they have a thing called, I forget the exact name of it, but it's a comedy thing they do. And they talked about it endlessly for the month before this big show that they were doing. I had absolutely no idea what they were talking about. And when I asked people, what are you talking about? They just roll their eyes. Like, how can you not know this? So yeah, there's an example for you.
Yeah. I feel like everyone like goes through this a little bit as soon as they move to a different country for like whatever, even like study abroad. I mean, I guess this is technically study abroad for me, but when domestic students go do study abroads, like I feel like there would definitely be like culture shocks or yeah. Right. So Sarah, if you want to go ahead.
Yeah. So so you guys obviously gave us some examples of like going to a foreign like culture and then like not being able to um like really understand some of the very like niche part of those cultures, and like that kind of making you feel isolated. So I was wondering how does it feel like when it comes from like a friend? Like if friends like, oh, you don't know Super Bowl, and it and what is the difference from that compared to like the professor? If the professor makes a reference and then you don't understand the Super Bowl, and how would you react to it?
Well, I think like the biggest like difference in that is like the mode of like communication and like where is it happening. Like with a friend, like if you're bringing it up, you're like under two assumptions: either they know it and like great, like you have like common thing to talk about, or two, like if not, like you'd be happy to like introduce them about it. So I think when it happens with a friend, it has like less of an like alienating effect. When you're like speaking in a classroom, which like when you bring it up, it's like under the assumption that like you already know like your audience, like or like the audience you presuppose like who you're speaking to, and you're using it to like establish camaraderie. It's like telling inside jokes, and it really like brings everyone together, which is great. But like sometimes like in the telling of these like using these cultural references without like additional explanation, they can like and often have like come at the expense of like other students who are like not like within the same cultural frame of reference, like not just like international students, but like other BIPOC students as well who are like from like different from the dominant culture. So I think that's like the main difference. And like fortunately, like I guess it's fortunate that like for the examples I've given about like the DMV or like Red Sox and Yankees, like there are 3 of them, but only like 2 of them are like real. So like it means that like although I've like faced it, like it's not so like distinctive that I can remember a lot of it, but I mean it has happened, but like not like as much as I like have feared. It's like if that's like an indication of something, but obviously like your mileage may vary.
I think in your defense, I've lived here for like 11 years now, and I don't know what Yankees and Red Sox do. I think they're baseball teams, but that's as far as my knowledge goes. So, yeah.
The point you brought up about like social versus academic situations that that have like cultural barriers is so interesting. I mean, I'm a domestic student who lives in a house with all international students. So like there are 4 of us are international. One of us is me, is from America, and that's been such an enriching experience. And of course because everyone's from different countries except for 2 who are from France. There is no dominant narrative other than the American one that's always implicit. And so that's been like a fun opportunity for me to be like, oh, let's learn how Celsius works. Like, oh, like let's learn like the metric system better. And like that's been like a fun activity for me to like immerse myself in. But despite like, and like it's so enriching to talk about politics with my roommates because like we come from so many different perspectives. And I think that like my house is just like this ideal of interculturalism. But that being said, like I get to feel comfortable in that because I am a domestic student who I can exit my house at any point and talk to everyone about Fahrenheit temperatures, and I can exit my house at any point and never be threatened in an academic setting to not understand references. And like that has been that's such an interesting dichotomy, and it really shows just both like how good interculturalism can be and also just how detrimental having a narrative that's like dominant to the point of oppression, which I think it often probably is for a lot of international students and other BIPOC students at Wesleyan's campus.
Awesome.
Yeah, thank you. Does anyone else have anything to share? Okay, we'll just move on to the next question then. So, what is your first instinct when you don't understand something that your friend asks you or like talks about? Like, do you just like nod along, or like do you approach it or depending on like what it is, like how do you deal with situations like that?
Yeah, I actually have an experience like not only like a professor, like with a friend that happened like I guess like just 2 weeks ago. It's really funny. So they were talking about like there were these few friends of mine, or they're from like America or like more specifically Virginia, like North Carolina area. So they were driving down like a road and they saw a car with like very obnoxious flags. And since like they were from like different political parties, like my friends like they were not super happy about like that car, and they did a lot of things to it. Like they shouted at it, jeered at it, and like this was what my friend mentioned. Like she threw pills at it. So like I didn't really know what like threw pills mean. What throw pills mean? I just assumed it was like a cultural reference or like an idiom. So I just like laughed and nodded along, even though I don't know what it means. But apparently that part is like super important to the story, because like throw pills just literally means like throw the meds like they have on in the car. So like yeah, that has happened like a lot of times. I just nod along like I didn't really want to like correct or like stop the ask because it really like kills the vibes or like the flow, which is like it sounds like such a trivial thing, but I think it really is like important to like a certain degree. So like when that happens, like in a conversation with a friend, I'll just like nod along unless they make it really explicit. It's something like I need to know about. Like if they like talk about like a character from Seinfeld or like compare me to it, like I really have to like clarify it then. But if not, if I can, I usually just like let it slide because I think like at times like the flow of the conversation, like for me, it's more important than like understanding every single bit because like it's not entirely possible. But really, I think it's really at your discretion. Like sometimes you can infer by context, like sometimes it's like really essential to understanding, or sometimes you just really want to know what is being said. So that has been my experience, and I'll be interested to like hear what everyone else has like dealt with.
This is not exactly a response to the question I just asked, but it's more like what we were talking about, the social aspect of it. I guess the question I asked was also kind of social aspect of it too. So it's just an experience I had like during elections week, and I guess like I did think about it, and it was with my friends, and some of my friends are domestic, and while I was talking to them, I was also very heated up and passionate about it. And they were like, well, you know, it doesn't really affect you. Like you're an international student. Why should it affect you that much? And I'm like, I don't know. Like they were like, oh, you're gonna be fine. Don't worry. And I was just like, you don't even like, you know, so I think experiences like that can be really frustrating. And I don't think they mean it in a bad way, but it's just sometimes that's how it can come off as like insensitive, right? So I think yeah. It's just sometimes this is that I just thought of that experience out of nowhere, but like while I was thinking of the social aspect of it, and then I just thought of that, and I was like, maybe they didn't even understand. And technically, the way they are thinking about it is like, well, you know, like I mean, she cares about American politics, but why should she care about it as much as us? So there's like I feel like a feeling of entitlement there as well. So yeah, yeah, Sarah.
Yeah, I just received a message on the chat from Constance, and she said that I'll be saying it in her first person writing. She said that I deferred to the spring semester, but I first witnessed the experience 3 years ago participating in scholars program with other African students. I had the belief that everyone spoke a better English than I did. I would always question my sentence structure and pronunciation every time I wanted to participate during seminars. Some spoke really fast that I wouldn't get what they were talking about. I could not even ask for a clarification. I was so afraid for anyone to question my worthy. Um, I found it annoying for an instructor to call out my name during a discussion. Um, yeah, that's what she had to say. So, so I guess this will go out to the professor in this discussion, and she brought out her discomfort with speaking out in class and how it might make the instructor feel uncomfortable. Um, what do you think from an instructor's perspective?
One of the issues is a lot of the instructors don't understand. And from a instructor's point of view, it's our way of figuring out that you're paying attention or that you understand the information. So we'll call on you. But a lot of them don't understand that, for example, I don't like to cold call students. I really don't do that, especially if I have students whose first language is in English, because I know it takes you a couple of seconds to process things before you speak. But a lot of professors don't do that. So what they're doing is trying to see if you're paying attention. I suppose some other ways you could do that is make sure, it's hard to do online, but make sure you make eye contact with your professor. Make sure you participate when you can and let them know, put something in the chat, anything you can do. And if you participate in other ways, they won't call on you because they've already seen you do something else and they know you understand and they know you're following along. So that would kind of be my advice.
Yeah. I agree. I think it's important to communicate. 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 I think it's important to communicate What do you recommend for, like, let's say an instructor calls on a student and they really don't want to speak? What do you recommend for that student to do?
Um, yeah, it's a hard one to do. I would try saying something like, can I pass on this one? And then at the end of class, say, hey, I'm really uncomfortable when you call on me. Is there another way I can participate? Stay a few minutes after class, every class, and ask them. I have a student who does that right now. Every session at the end, he sticks around for just a minute to ask a question or let me know he understood something. And that way your professor knows, because generally speaking, you are graded on your participation. Even if it's not on the syllabus, you are being graded on it. So find another way and tell them you're uncomfortable.
Yeah, just to add on, from I think that from the perspective of someone who like is part of the people who need to be woken up about these things, I think that a lot of professors need to be woken up, and I don't think that means. And again, take everything I say with a grain of salt, because like again, I don't have the same experience as a lot of other people in this room have, but like I think that like it isn't your job to assimilate to another, like Quentin was saying earlier, like another mode of participation entirely in order to be a successful participant. But like I think the reason that professors are bad at this, or like the reason that a lot of professors like are cold calling or think that participation is the only way to know someone's paying attention, is because they haven't had enough people, which is, you know, not the fault of people who haven't done it, but it's, you know, but not enough people have been like, hey, like this is harder for me than it is for your other like white American student. And I just like the thing I tell, I'm a peer advisor, like the thing I tell every single person I peer advise, like no matter what, it's just like learn as soon as possible how to advocate for yourself in the way that makes the most sense to you. And a lot of the time that means sending emails. And so if like speaking in class is uncomfortable, that's okay. And like the way to get around that, I think is to be sending emails and just like email your professor saying, hey, like I'm this person, like English is not my first language. These things make me nervous. Like professors are people, and they will treat you more like people if you come to them with vulnerability. I think vulnerability is met with vulnerability, and there's a lot of power in that. I realize I'm speaking quickly as I say this, which is, you know, another sign of all the same things we've been talking about. But the point is like it's so hard, and it puts you in such a hard position. But like advocating for yourself in whatever way is possible is I think like the way to go. And you're always in a position of ability to email professors if you want to get into a class, if you didn't want to participate in that class period, like you should bother them, because that's their job to answer your emails. And like they're not doing their job if they're not answering your emails, and they have to do the thing. So just bother them. Like I'm sorry, Professor Hepford, I'm really into bothering professors. It's like my whole thing. Sorry. You're like I'm not in any of your classes, I guess. But yeah, that's my advice, is email professors until they get sick of you. You usually get what you want.
I will add on to that. Go to their office hours. That's in person, face to face, and that even has more of an effect than email. Emails are easy to ignore, but it's difficult to ignore when you're sitting right in front of them.
Just silly white Americans need to be told that they're silly white Americans. Like as a silly white American, like I couldn't have like the successful friendships that I do if I haven't been told by my friends that I'm a silly white American, and like that's important, and that's important to me. That's all.
Actually,
oh, please go ahead. I was just gonna add on to like something really small to what Anya had said, so please go ahead.
okay. I was just gonna ask all of you. I mean, I can only see my classroom. I don't go to other classrooms. What happens? What are some of the issues that you're having? Because I do a presentation at new faculty orientation every year. And if I know some of these things, I'll include them. I've gathered a lot from what you said, but tell me more. And also what I say in class, you can type in. Go ahead, Sarah.
Yeah, I think it really depends from professor to professor, but like I guess like when I speak up in class, I get like really nervous, and then I like start stumbling upon my words. And then some professors are like really like nice about it. They like wait for you to finish your sentences, and then they like nod and smile while they're at it, so I don't feel like I'm holding them back. Or but like some professors just like get exasperated, or like start looking around, or like start rolling their eyes, and I'm like, and then that kind of makes me feel like very uncomfortable and like kind of reel myself back and like um yeah, that kind of response to what you're asking, I think is really important as well.
Okay.
In my experience so far, professors at Wesleyan have been really kind, but that could just be my experience. But you know, every time I have emailed them or I've explained something to them, they have been super understanding. I also suggest like reaching out to the dean at times, like your class dean, because I feel like they can also be very helpful. For a class of 2021, I believe it's Dean Leathers, and every time I've talked to her, she's super helpful, she's super sweet, and she can also talk to your professors if you don't feel comfortable talking to them. And another thing is like one thing that made me really feel comfortable talking in class is being in a small seminar style class, because I feel like it's less people, so it's you know, you feel more comfortable talking. And I feel like, at least in my experience, like professors have been really nice. And sometimes I also get really nervous if the students around me are fidgeting, right? Like if I'm talking and then the students around me, like maybe it's not the professor who's saying anything, maybe the professor is perfectly fine, but the students around me are fidgeting, or they're like, you know, like I've lost their attention, and, you know, or like maybe they're smiling or something, then I just get nervous. But one of the best classes I've had last year was this really small seminar style class, and like we were all really supportive, and even some, from my memory, there were some people who were not very good at speaking, but even they spoke up because it was just a really supportive group of students as well. So I don't think it's just on the professor. I think it's like a group effort. Yeah.
Small classes are also a really great opportunity to do what Quentin and I talked about earlier, which is just set up community guidelines or initiate setting up community guidelines, or mention it to a friend who is willing to initiate setting up community guidelines for discussions. My favorite community guideline for discussions is if two people start speaking at the same time, don't let the person who speaks less defer to the other person. And that can just be like, I think that every professor should make that a norm in their class the first day of class. I don't know why that isn't more of a thing here. But small classes are a great environment to kind of like, you know, try out the like initiating those guidelines if you feel comfortable doing so.
Yeah, I actually have a professor right now, Professor Watanabe. I don't know if you guys know him, but he actually like on purpose, like if someone like speaks more than the others in class, he's like, "Oh, we have heard a lot from you. Can we maybe hear from someone else who didn't speak as much?" And I guess that kind of like a lot of people get really passionate about talking and sharing their ideas, and that's so wonderful. But it also gives that kind of like initiation from the professor, also gives other people's chances to speak. Okay, anyone else? So since we're talking about kind of like the interpersonal like dynamics in a class between peer to peer, my question is, do people feel comfortable do people feel comfortable interrupting someone in class, or like if someone's like talking and yeah, do you feel comfortable interjecting?
Oh yeah, I actually have like really strong thoughts about this. Like so in like the colloquium that Anya and I are in, like usually like we have like a hand raising system, but sometimes like students get so passionate they would like just jump in and interject, or just jump in without raising their hands, like to ask a clarification question, which is like totally fine in itself, but it's I recognize that it's not something I would do because I guess I mean I like speaking, but like I'm more reserved when I like want to speak. I really like rely on raising my hands. So like it's something I have to rely on, and definitely I think it has like caused me to feel like uncomfortable at times, like not being really exactly able to jump in. I think it's both like both the cultural and like just personal. I'm not too like brazen as outspoken as I am. So like that's something that I've definitely like dealt with and I'm still dealing with, and like yeah, I am still negotiating with it and like wondering like what's the best approach to go about it. Should I like really just jump in, or should I like stick to like resorting to like raising hands?
Yeah, I so appreciate that perspective because when I first entered colloquium, I was so anti raising hands because I had been doing classroom discussions all throughout high school without raising hands, and it felt really annoying to me. And I realized as soon as we weren't raising hands in colloquium that other people didn't have the same rules as me, which makes a lot of sense. And that like when you don't have agreed upon standards for how to have a discussion without hand raising, having a discussion without hand raising is terrible, and it means that only a few people end up speaking. And yeah, it's again, that's like another example of like me needing to be woken up by people like Quentin who like are able to like share these experiences with me. It's been super, super valuable because like that can like those things completely change my mind.
If it makes you guys any more comfortable with it, I've been at faculty meetings where people raise their hands. So it really is just a good way to indicate they need to speak.
Okay, so it's almost 10 p.m. So I guess we have to end this. But one question we have after this panel, which we hope you enjoyed, is what is one thing you can take away from this like from the presentation and the discussion we just had? Like, what's one meaningful thing you have taken away? All of us.
Well, personally, I'm really glad like we're all here to like talk about this. Like, I really enjoyed everything, especially like the latter component where we just like sort of like aired out like the problems or like experiences we've had, and I think that's like really helpful approach. Like just even like, talking about it and letting it out. So yeah, that's something I really enjoy.
Professor Hefford shared with us that she will be having a discussion on how to participate in the beginning of her classes. So that's super awesome. Yeah, just yeah, I'm sure your students will appreciate it.
For me, it feels good to have a space where we can talk about the problems that a lot of times minorities or international students, whoever, like go through sometimes, and we don't really talk about it as much. So it feels good to have that space, and I think more domestic students and professors should also be involved because at Wesleyan we people do come across international students so much, and I think it's like it's a community effort. Everyone goes always. So I think we need to talk about this more. Actually, that's what I think.
Um, I think one thing that I'll probably take away from this is definitely like the cues, how to start a question, how to maybe like add on to someone's points. I think those are very useful, and kind of like when you have something to say and you like can't put those ideas in words, it's kind of like saying those sentences. either before or after, kind of like gives you something to say while you think about it. But I think it also made me more comfortable with interrupting, like, yeah, because it's something we have to do. We have to share our ideas, and our opinions do matter. So even if we can't express it as well as others.
I would also like to thank you guys for arranging this discussion. It was very helpful, and I learned a lot that I have to speak up for myself and also know what I really want. At the end of the day, I want a quality education as others, but I also have to strive for it. And thank you so much for arranging this. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing.
I posted our emails on the chat to anyone who wants to reach out to us afterwards to maybe get access to the beautiful PowerPoint that Quentin and Anya put together, or just a talking buddy, because I think all of us kind of understand where what like we're going through or what you guys might be going through. So yeah. And thank you so much for Quentin and Anya for leading this discussion. And thank you, Nafisa, I guess. Yeah. And thank you so much to Sarah, Constance, and Christina and Professor Hefford for joining us for this discussion on how to speak up. I'll end the meeting here.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And good job, Quentin.
Oh, thank you. Like, yeah, I was wondering if you like stay like behind a little bit.
Yeah, we'll be staying behind a little bit if you have any questions and want to talk a little bit more.
Great job. This was a wonderful presentation. Thank you guys for doing this.
Yeah, like it went like so much better than expected. Like I guess like the turnout rate was like something like kind of expected, but it's like 3 more than expected. So well,
all of these, don't be upset.
yeah.
And like
And I
it
guess,
probably matters so much to those people, Quentin. Like,
yeah,
like feeling heard makes such a difference.
yeah. And I guess like the most important thing is that this really doesn't have to be a one-off thing. I was thinking like next semester, like next 3 semesters we have, and I think maybe like even in ISO it could like
I was
be
just
like
going to say orientation. Quentin, do you want to do this? I'm holding an orientation. I direct message this to Constance, but I'm holding an orientation like I individually for the students who deferred first semester. Like new students who deferred first semester. So like I'm planning it like it's my winter job on campus. And if you wanted to hold this panel, just to even just like make domestic students aware of it, I don't know what the ratio of international to non-international students is. I know there's going to be like a small winter ISO, and I'm also just holding the NSO. If you want to do something, then
yeah, definitely, that sounds really great.
yeah,
Yeah,
we have the PowerPoint. Like, right? Why not? You know? Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
I have to go, but thank you guys so much. I so appreciate being involved. Yeah.
thank you so much. See,
Bye all.
thank you so much, and thank you so much.
You
It's
can
been
go back
really
to sleep
really
now.
helpful. Yeah, like I guess I was really worried, but like thankfully like all worked well in the end. But yeah, like thank you so much.
Yeah.
And like yeah, I'll
It was really good.
Yeah, it went really smoothly. Yeah, and the PowerPoint was beautiful. Do you just use Google for Google Slides or something?
yeah, I mostly just use Google Slides. I guess I make a lot of I've made a lot of like slides before, so like whoops, let me pause like to stop the recording.